Hello everyone. So today we're going to look at the urinary system. Oh yeah. Hey, why can't you hear a pterodactyl use the bathroom? Because the P is silent. Yellow background. Yeah, very mature start. Here we go. Um, with the urinary system, maybe you know, maybe you don't. What is the major organ of the urinary system? And I'm hoping maybe you didn't know this, I don't know, but it's the kidney. So the kidneys are these two bean-shaped organs, and they're actually closer to the back side of your body than the front side of your body. So during a dissection, you'd have to actually push the digestive system organs out of the way in order to see the kidneys. They're kind of closer to the back. So the way the kidney works is that it filters the blood to produce urine. So blood goes in, and you can see the renal artery. That's the one that goes to the kidney. Blood goes in, the kidney filters it, and then good stuff comes back out and stays in the bloodstream, while bad stuff enters this tube called the ureter and ultimately becomes urine. So the goal really of the urinary system, performed mainly by the kidney here, is to just filter the blood and get rid of waste. So think of it like a little coffee filter or a filter in general. It removes unneeded materials and retains needed materials in the blood. Another function of the urinary system is it helps maintain water balance. So while it's doing this filtering, it can control how much water goes into the urine versus how much water is retained by the body to make sure all your cells are nice and happy. And maybe you remember this from bio last year. You may remember this term isotonic, and that means that there's the same solute concentration inside the cell as outside the cell. And so water goes in, water goes out, and it's all nice and happy and balanced. If a cell takes on too much water, meaning there's more solute in the cell that draws more water into the cell, then it can rupture and burst, and that's not good. And if a cell doesn't have enough water, meaning there's more solute outside the cell, water is continually drawn out, then it can kind of shrivel up and it doesn't work as well. So maintaining proper water balance is obviously very important to make sure your cells are nice and healthy. It also helps maintain ion balance. And we've talked about these ions a lot. So sodium and potassium, we need to make sure there's proper levels so that your nervous system can function because these are central to firing action potentials. Calcium ions need to be balanced because they're found in your bones and then they're found in your, or they're used by your muscles for muscle contraction and that sliding filament. Iron's another one we've talked about where you need proper iron levels in order to transport oxygen throughout the blood. So basically, these are just three we've talked about, but there are many minerals and ions that need to be balanced in the bloodstream, and while filtering, the kidneys help maintain that. It helps maintain acid-base balance. And yeah, okay, so filters the blood. Another major function of the urinary system is excretion. Now, excretion is the removal of metabolic waste, and I want to talk about that term, metabolic waste. These are wastes that are produced as a byproduct of your metabolism. Fecal matter is not a metabolic waste. As we saw in our last chapter, food goes into the mouth and it just passes through this long tube that includes the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, the rectum, and all the good stuff is sort of pulled into the bloodstream, and the bad stuff just continues through this tube. So fecal matter really was never part of our body at all. It's just the part of our food that we were unable to use and that just passed right on through and comes out. A metabolic waste, by contrast, is produced just by chemical reactions happening inside our body. So probably the best known example of a metabolic waste is carbon dioxide. When you do cellular respiration, which we've talked about, you react glucose with oxygen to produce CO2 and water. Well, that CO2, that carbon dioxide, is a waste product, and you have to get rid of it. And as we saw a couple units ago, our lungs get rid of it for us. We exhale that carbon dioxide, and that's what gets rid of that metabolic waste. So CO2 is this byproduct of our metabolism, cellular respiration, and when we exhale, we get rid of that waste product. Many other waste products are actually removed by your kidneys through the urine, and in fact, that's basically what urine is. It's all these metabolic wastes that are being gotten rid of. So an example, a well-known, actually it's not that well-known, urea is a metabolic waste. And it looks like this, and it's produced to remove nitrogen waste. If you metabolize proteins, proteins have these little NH2 groups on all the building blocks, the amino acids, and if you burn proteins for energy, you got to get rid of those NH2 groups, and urea is a way to do that. Um, so let's take a look now at the organs of the urinary system. As I said, the main organ is the kidney. They're located more closely to your back or posterior side. And again, they filter the blood, they return useful materials to the blood, convert waste into urine, and then help regulate all those things. Water balance, ion balance, acid-base balance, all that stuff along the way. If you were to take a cross section, if you were just to cut your kidney in half, you would see that there's different regions. There's the renal cortex, which is this outer portion, the renal medulla, which is the middle region, and then the renal pelvis, which really is just kind of a drainage system right here. And if you were to zoom in even more, you would see that this whole structure consists of these tiny little tubes called nephrons. And foreshadowing, we're going to talk more about nephrons soon. Some other structures involved in the urinary system, the renal artery and vein. You may recall we talked about these when we learned the names of blood vessels. We kind of drew our inferior vena cava, our descending aorta, and we had this little nub sticking off of those two that we called the renal artery and vein. Those nubs didn't go anywhere at that time, but now we know about the kidney, so we can make them go somewhere. They go to the kidney, and the renal artery brings blood to the kidney. The renal vein brings blood back from the kidney. Then also attached to the kidney is another tube called the ureter. The ureter transports urine from the kidney down to the bladder. And the bladder is what stores the urine. And then the urethra is this little tube here that transports the urine out of the body. So you can kind of see how this works in general. Blood from the aorta comes down, it branches down the renal artery, it goes to the kidney. The kidney does its thing, it filters the blood. The good stuff is retained in the bloodstream and comes back through the renal vein and goes back to the heart. The bad stuff heads down through the ureter, where it's stored in the bladder until it's time to exit through the urethra. Okay, couple things before we move on. First of all, the urethra is actually different in males and females. It's not different, but it's a different length, and there's a few little things to discuss around this. So in males, the urethra, this is the bladder, and then here's the urethra. It passes through a structure called the prostate gland. You may have heard of the prostate gland. This helps, it actually adds kind of a basic solution to sperm and helps them survive. But in passing right through this becomes a problem because in many men, as you get older, the prostate gland begins to enlarge. And you can see on that picture on the left, here's a nice healthy prostate gland with the urethra passing through, but here's an enlarged prostate. And so it can actually constrict the urethra and pinch off the bladder. Oftentimes, this is benign, meaning non-cancerous, so it's not it's not cancerous, it's still problematic, but sometimes it's also cancerous, and so you may have heard of prostate cancer. And so urination becomes very difficult because this constriction of the urethra is going on. And so, if you watch TV long enough, you'll see a scene with some old man talking about how he has to pee all the time. And this is a big reason why. As you get older, that prostate can potentially constrict the urethra and creates that urge to go to the bathroom. And yet, because it's constricting, you can't go to the bathroom, and it's very uncomfortable. So the way they diagnose this is also a common fodder for movie humor, and it's not very pleasant, gentlemen. I'm so sorry, but the way they check to see if that prostate gland is enlarged, is they feel it. And it turns out there's a very direct line that gives you very good access to feeling the prostate gland. And if you haven't figured this out yet, that is the anus, my friends. And so they actually will, with a gloved hand, um, have to shove a finger up the anus to kind of feel that. Yeah, not very pleasant. So females, you don't get off too easy on this urethra business either. In females, the urethra is much shorter, and that's because in males, the urethra extends down the length of the penis, but in females, it obviously doesn't. But because of that, females can be slightly more susceptible to urinary tract infections. And what can happen is bacteria from, fecal matter can kind of make their way to the vaginal opening or to the urethral opening. And if they go in there, then that can actually result in a urinary tract infection. And so urinating can kind of force some of that out, but that is a problem. And so it is recommended that after using the bathroom, women especially are supposed to wipe away from that urinary tract opening and vaginal opening to help limit the potential for those bacteria from getting in there. And yes, okay. So then what we're going to do, I think I'm going to pause there. And then in part 2, we're going to zoom in on that kidney. I kind of waved my hands over this filtering idea. And so in part 2, we're going to look at, well, how does the kidney actually do this job of filtering the blood and producing the urine? So we'll look at that next.